This is how it happened. Delta Flight 4819 departed Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport on February 17, 2025, carrying 80 passengers and crew. The Bombardier CRJ-900 regional jet, operated by Endeavour Air under Delta Connection, approached Toronto Pearson International Airport shortly before 3 p.m. local time. As it descended, air traffic controllers warned the pilots of wind gusts up to 64 kilometers per hour, which translates to 40 miles per hour, with turbulence reported in the glide path. As the plane descended toward the runway, the pilots fought against fierce crosswinds, hammering the aircraft from the side. The gusts made it difficult to keep the jet steady. Just moments before touchdown, a powerful blast of wind struck, tilting the aircraft sharply to the right. The pilots struggled to correct the angle, but the sudden shift was too strong. The right wing bent slightly, touching the ground, and the plane's belly scraped against the runway, sending a shower of sparks trailing behind. The force of the landing caused it to tip further, ripping its right wing, flipping onto its side and skidding violently across the runway. As it was upside down, it also took out the tail of the aircraft. Metal screeched against the asphalt as smoke and debris filled the air. The aircraft, now out of control, continued to slide, leaving a deep scar across the tarmac as it finally came to a grinding halt. The question was, why did everyone survive? The answer lies in the plane's design. The CRJ-900's wings are engineered to detach under extreme stress, a feature that likely prevented the fuselage from rupturing. If the wing had stayed attached, it could have torn the cabin apart. By breaking away, the aircraft slows more gradually, protecting those inside. This controlled failure design, coupled with rigorous crew training and seatbelt adherence, saved lives. On January 29, 2025, its siblings, the CRJ-700 Bombardier, crashed with a Black Hawk helicopter. American Airlines Flight 5342, which we'll refer to as the landing flight, was on its final approach to runway 33. At this stage, called short final, the aircraft was mere moments from landing, flying at an altitude of about 400 feet. This is the most critical phase of landing, where every second counts and pilots are laser-focused on safely bringing the plane down. At the same time, an Army Black Hawk helicopter, identified as PAT-25, was reportedly on a possible training flight. It was flying perpendicular to the flight path of Flight 5342, following the course of the Potomac River. The Potomac River is a designated flight corridor for helicopters, and it's common to see aircraft like this operating in the area. The key difference between the two aircraft in this scenario was their operating rules. The Black Hawk helicopter, PAT-25, was flying under visual flight rules. This means it was required to rely on visual observation of its surroundings to avoid other aircraft. The landing flight 5342 was operating under instrument flight rules, which give it priority over VFR flights in controlled airspace. This system assumes that VFR aircraft will actively maintain visual separation to avoid conflicts. Moments before the collision, the air traffic control tower at Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport called PAT-25 to confirm whether they had the other aircraft in sight. PAT-25 responded that they did. At first glance, this seems like an acknowledgement that they were aware of Flight 5342's presence and were taking steps to avoid it. However, it now seems likely that PAT-25 had mistakenly identified a different aircraft, possibly a departing flight from the same airport, and believed that was the other aircraft referred to by the tower. Tragically, PAT-25 may not have realized that Flight 5342 was descending directly into its path. This misidentification could have led to the Black Hawk failing to adjust its course in time to avoid a collision. On February 13, 2025, in just 4 days, this crash happened. Around 10:15 a.m., a U.S. Navy EA-18G Growler from Electronic Attack Squadron V8Q-135 was in flight when it developed a mechanical glitch, likely exacerbated by weather conditions at the time. Light rain and fog had reduced visibility to just 4 to 8 miles, complicating the situation. When a critical error message lit up the cockpit, the jet's warning systems activated instantly. The two crew members made a split-second decision to eject, escaping the aircraft moments before it plummeted nose-first at a 60-degree angle into San Diego Bay. The plane crashed with its landing gear still deployed, sending a massive plume of water erupting into the air. Interestingly, in the past 2 months, there have been multiple major plane crashes. The Learjet 55 twin-engine business jet departed from Northeast Philadelphia Airport on a routine flight to Springfield Branson National Airport in Missouri, according to the FAA. The aircraft, known for its speed and efficiency, was designed to operate in various weather conditions. Takeoff occurred at approximately 6:07 p.m., but shortly after becoming airborne, the jet encountered a technical issue. Weather conditions at the time included light rain and fog, reducing visibility to about 5 to 7 miles. From the top angle, we can see the experienced pilot made a hard descending left-hand turn with no correctional input. This shows the pilot was likely confused or disoriented once entering the cloud and rain. While modern jets are built to handle adverse weather, unforeseen mechanical failures or environmental factors can still pose significant risks. Tragically, just moments into the flight, the aircraft lost control and crashed near Roosevelt Mall, creating a huge explosion of smoke. Let's take a look at a different case scenario of a Jeju Air Flight 2216. This South Korean airline was granted permission to land from the south on runway 1 northward. But control tower cautions against bird activity, so the aircraft made a slight deviation in flight path. The pilot declares Mayday after it hit a couple of birds, and it was instructed to make a go-around and land on runway 19 southward. It was at this moment the airplane encountered another problem with the landing gear, which did not open. Finally, the plane had to make a belly landing with what was supposedly a landing gear failure because it hit in the middle of the runway and crashed into the elevated localizer antenna and concrete, erupting into a huge fireball, while the tail section remained intact. Morning 8:57. A TC broadcasts a cautionary advisory about bird activity in the vicinity of the airport. 8:59. The pilot of Flight 7 C2216 reports a bird strike, declares an emergency with repeated. This is what he said: Mayday, Mayday, Mayday calls, and notifies a TC with the message: bird strike, go around. Just 1 minute after the bird strike at 9 o'clock. The flight initiates a go-around maneuver and requests authorization to land on runway 19, which requires an approach from the opposite end of the airport's single runway, that is from the north to the south, which is not the actual landing procedure. Usually then land from the south to the north. 9:01 in the morning, a TC clears the aircraft to land on runway 19, 9:02 local time. The aircraft touches down on the runway approximately 1,200 meters, which translates to 3,940 feet from the threshold of the 2,800 meter. This is around 9,184-foot runway. 9:02 and 55 seconds later, the airport fire rescue unit completes the deployment of fire rescue equipment. 9:03 Flight 7 C2216 overshoots the runway and crashes into a hill-like structure beyond the runway's end, which later on we came to know that it hit the localizer antenna and its adjacent concrete embankment. And finally, we have a missile attack plane crash. At 10:43 a.m. Kazakh time, which is Russia's Rostov Air Traffic Control Center, received a signal indicating that the crew had decided to divert the flight to Aktau due to adverse weather conditions in Baku and Makhachkala, a city in Russia's Dagestan region. At 10:53 a.m., the Rostov flight director informed Aktau's flight manager that an oxygen tank in the passenger cabin had exploded. This explosion reportedly caused passengers to lose consciousness, prompting the crew to request immediate medical assistance upon landing. Emergency teams were swiftly mobilized at Aktau Airport in preparation for the aircraft's arrival. At 11:02 a.m., the pilots made contact with Aktau Airport's air traffic control tower. Despite their efforts, the crew faced significant challenges during their descent. They attempted to land twice but were unable to maintain altitude or stabilize the aircraft. Tragically, at 11:28 a.m., contact with the crew was lost, and moments later, the plane crashed to the ground. This means the plane was hit between 10:30 to 10:53 a.m. Kazakh time by the Russian anti-air defense system. In this scenario, the plane is flying at a significantly higher altitude, rendering the cannons ineffective. Consequently, the system opts to deploy a missile as the optimal weapon for engagement. The missile is launched vertically from its sealed canister. It uses its advanced onboard guidance system to navigate with precision towards the designated target. As the missile approaches, its onboard sensors continue to track the civilian aircraft, which in this case is tragically identified as an Azerbaijani civilian aircraft. The missile carries a 25-kilogram high-explosive warhead. Upon reaching the target, the warhead detonates, releasing an intense explosion. The explosion occurs near the side of the aircraft, causing catastrophic damage to its tail section. The resultant shrapnel penetrates the fuselage, inflicting severe internal structural damage. This devastating impact destabilizes the aircraft, leading to an uncontrollable descent. The severely damaged plane crashes near Akta Airport, resulting in a tragic loss of life and a devastating outcome for all those on board.